Welcome, everybody, and Happy New Year. I'm glad you could make it to our 2015 on-site marketing breakdown. So what we're going to cover here today is basically two things. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look back at 2015 and see what worked and what didn't. And then we're going to cover some strategies on how to grow revenue in 2016 based on what we saw that worked in 2015. So we've got a ton to go over here today, so I'm going to go ahead and jump into it. So my name is Peter, and I'll be your presenter here today. Here at AddShoppers, everybody else in the company is actually literally too busy working really hard at making AddShoppers awesome for 2016. So I had to take one for the team and introduce myself. So I'm introducing myself. I'm really glad to be here today, and I'm glad you guys could all make it. Little bit about me. I've been with AddShoppers for about 4 years now, and right now I'm heading up growth and sitting kind of in between the sales and marketing department. So like I said, a lot to cover today, so we're just going to jump right into it. Here's the agenda. Up first, we're going to cover on-site social. So what did we see in 2015? And then we'll look a little bit at where things are headed in 2016. Next, we're going to look at referral marketing. So this is going to be a little bit similar to on-site social, but this is more of your marketing campaigns, leveraging social to actually, drive results. Then we're going to shift gears a little bit and look at targeting results and benchmarks. So what we mean by this is things like, how are you capturing emails while you're on the site or driving conversions. So we'll look at a couple things that you can do here around capturing more emails and driving more conversions. And then lastly, we're going to cover what you need to know about the top social networks. So we're going to cut away all of the clutter and just give you in bite-sized chunks, here's exactly what you need to know about each social network going into 2016 so you can really hit the ground running. If we have time at the end, we'll cover some questions. We have a really packed webinar here today, so we may not have time to get to questions, but please, either way, if anything comes up that's on your mind in the middle, just go ahead and drop it into the Q&A box in the GoToWebinar panel, and some things we may be able to answer in real time, others we may keep towards the end. Even if we can't answer it during the webinar, we'll always follow up with you afterwards, so please do that. Also, lastly, throughout this webinar, we're going to have some case studies, polls, and free downloads available, sprinkled throughout just to keep things interesting. So this isn't going to be us going over a bunch of stats. That would be boring. We've really tied it into, case studies and results here as well. So this isn't going to be a snooze fest. Let's get started. So all of the stats that we're going to be sharing with you today are coming directly from the AddShoppers platform. And a little bit on the reach of our network in 2015. We tracked almost 500 million unique shoppers. We touched over 45 million different products, and this was tracked across 10,000 stores, and our code was loaded over 3.4 billion times, so that's the number of page views there. First up, we're going to cover the on-site social strategies. So up first, I'd like to start this off with a quick poll. Really simple. Do you offer social login on your store? 3 options, yes, no, or no, but this is something you're looking into in 2016. Just kind of want to get a feel for you guys, where you are with this. And then we'll take a look at the results, and we have some interesting stats around social login. So I'll give you guys a couple moments to fill this out, and then we'll jump right back into this. All right, so interesting results here. We have 38% of people said yes, they currently offer social login. Another 38% of people said no, and the remaining 24% said no, but they're planning on adding it in 2016. So what this tells us is there is a good amount of opportunity here, and let's see where that opportunity is. First up, our data shows us that across our network, on average, 1 in every 5 customers will use social login during checkout if that's offered as an option to create your account. So that's about 20%, and we see this number going up. The trend is moving towards more and more people using social login. Secondly, looking specifically at mobile devices are gaining market share when it comes to social login really quickly. The rate here is 7% per quarter, and that means it's almost 30% per year. So if you take a look at all social logins, let's say 100% happened on desktop. After 1 year, that would be down to a 30%, 70% split. So as we can see here, social login is growing really quickly on mobile, and the reason for that is it's one of the best ways to boost mobile conversion rates. We'll look at that a little bit later on. Which network should you use if you offer social login? I think most people would guess just intuitively that Facebook is the most used option, and you're right. Google Plus is second here at 1/3 of all social logins. Most people find this a little bit surprisingly high because you would expect login with Facebook to be by far and away #1. But because so many people use Gmail, a lot of people use Google Plus to log in. The other one worth mentioning here is LinkedIn, and obviously this is going to come into play if you sell to other B2B companies. So here's your takeaway. This is what you need to know about social login. So definitely for those of you that say you're not using social login yet, but you're planning on it, and also those of you that just said you're not planning on using it yet, just something to think about. Nothing to you don't have to make a decision like right now, but just some food for thought here. So the first takeaway here is that social login is becoming less of a nice to have and more of a must have. So talked about mobile conversion rates a little bit earlier, and this is one of the primary reasons. Because mobile conversion rates are still lagging way, way behind desktop conversion rates, social login is one of the few things that's really helpful for boosting those mobile conversions. So that's why we recommend definitely looking into social login, and because it's one of the things that can help with that kind of pain point around mobile conversions. Second, this was pretty apparent from the stats, but which web network should you use? Obviously, Facebook and Google. Don't worry about any of the others. And then if you're a B2B company, consider adding LinkedIn. So next up, we're going to cover a lot of the social sharing and social revenue numbers and statistics that we saw in 2015. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is who was our average influencer in 2015? Who is most representative of the audience that's most likely to share out products or pages via social networks. So we crunched all of the sharing data that we saw in 2015, and we looked for the commonalities among the people that share out the most. And this is our influencer from last year, 2015. This person's female, in the younger demographic. They share with Pinterest, Facebook, Twitter, and email. As far as they share about 5 times per month. And also, this person utilizes Facebook login when they need to check out or create an account or log into your site for whatever reason. Now, looking at which social networks actually drive revenue, you can see the stats here on the screen. Obviously, Facebook is by far and away #1. After Facebook, you've got Twitter, Pinterest, email, and then Google Plus kind of rounding out the bottom there. One thing to think about here, this number includes all social referred revenue. So this is anything coming from social ads, organic social posts, people that follow your brand pages, people that are sharing organically, everything. Anything that was referred from any of these social networks gets included here. So this helps explain the Facebook number a little bit, because Facebook definitely has the most robust advertising platform. It receives much more advertising dollars than any of these networks combined. So that's why we see so much activity from Facebook. Next up, let's look at sharing per network. So here, things become much more equal, and the distribution among the is much more equal. You don't have the huge Facebook at almost 3/4. Here, it's much more equal. And the other notable thing about this stat is now Pinterest is #1. So Facebook actually is the second most shared network, and Pinterest is #1. Google+, email, and Twitter are the next ones worth mentioning here, and you can see the stats up here on the page, but these are the networks that see the most sharing. Now, lastly, we're going to look at which industries are converting social traffic the best. So here are the top 10. These 10 categories, we see the highest conversion rates consistently coming from social referrals. You can see them up here. If you're in any of these 10 industries, you should definitely be thinking about leveraging some kind of social marketing, or anything maybe around referral marketing. Top 5, food, home and garden, automotive, sporting goods, and holiday. So here you have it. If you do happen to fall into one of these, you're probably going to want to pay special attention to the next section. So just a heads up. But these are the top 10 categories that we saw in 2015 with the highest conversion rates from social traffic. So like I said, next up, we're going to look at referral marketing. So here, instead of just looking at, how much revenue came from Facebook, or how many shares, went to Pinterest or Twitter, now we're going to start looking at specific campaigns so we can see, what are behind the numbers that we just saw. Where did that revenue come from? How are the, the top performing, e-commerce sites actually driving, revenue from, social via not just referrals, but just about anything. So this is what we saw that worked best in 2015, and we'll also talk a little bit about what's going to keep expanding in 2016 if you need a little bit of direction for deciding what you want to focus on this year. First up, before we actually look at any of the results from last year, just wanted to take a quick survey from you guys. Do you utilize any word of mouth or referral-based campaigns? So this could be something like, if you have a refer a friend program, or if you just, encourage people to, share out with their friends, or, if you leverage any kind of maybe social contest or giveaways, pin it to win it, anything like that. Again, super simple options, and I'll give you a moment to fill that out, and then we'll take a look and move forward. All right, so I got the results here for you guys, live here in real time. About 50% of people said yes, 53% to be precise. 27% said no, and the remaining 20% said no, but this is something they're planning on, working on in 2016. So kind of interesting there, see what people are thinking about this year. And now for all of you guys, let's look at what did we see in 2015. So first up is social contest. So this is where you are running some kind of a giveaway that involves a social action as a mechanism to gain an entry. So a classic example of this is a pin it to win a giveaway, or share for entries. Anything like this is what we consider a social contest, and we ran a lot of these in 2015. And these are the results that we saw. First up, we're actually going to cover the increase in email captures first. You can see there that 1%. So not only do social contests generate a lot of sharing activity, and they're going to boost sharing, you'll see here average increase in sharing is almost 400%. So not only are they great for increasing sharing, but they're also great for capturing more emails. And the reason for that is because all this sharing activity is going on, it's reaching a new audience, and the great incentive of potentially winning that prize gets new audience, gets new leads, new people to come back, and they enter the contest because they want a chance to win too. So that's why you see both of those numbers being increased. So you have that. We do have a case study at the bottom. We'll drop the link in the chat box if you want to check that out. And what you'll see here is while 388% is the average, the numbers can definitely be a lot higher, based on the results you see. So let's move on. Social rewards is the next one we're going to cover here. So this is a little bit different from the social contest we just looked at. This is more of a day-to-day campaign that you might just keep running, rather than like a one-time or a campaign like social contests where you might run it on specific days or periods of the year. The way this works is this is where you're incentivizing sharing with an immediate coupon or discount or other offer. So the classic example of social rewards is the share for coupon functionality. If you can see the example on the screen, it's share for 5% off. So this is a perfect example of a social reward campaign. Now, just like social contests, we ran a lot of these last year, and the result that we saw on average across everybody was 191% increase in sharing when you have a social reward compared to not having anything at all with just regular sharing with nothing tied to it. Again, we have a case study here if you want to check that out. 1% might not seem like a lot, but this is people that are sharing out. So if you run the numbers, you should actually see where that can become pretty powerful if you can get 1% or more of your audience to actually share out. So check that out if you're interested. Otherwise, we've got a mini case study here. So one brand that we worked with, they ran social rewards and another app that we call purchase sharing together. And the results that they saw were 993% more sharing, over 300% more social traffic, and over 200% more social revenue. So the way this worked is on the checkout success page, after someone successfully completes the purchase, they used purchase sharing to pop up a prompt to that customer to share out. The social rewards incentivized that purchase share with a coupon that's good for their next order. So that's how the campaign worked, and these are the results that we saw from that. So pretty powerful, and if referral marketing is something that you're looking into, something that you can keep in mind for 2016. And lastly, we're going to cover the big one, Refer a Friend. So this is obviously a really big app, something that a ton of people are doing. We're starting to see them everywhere, almost, maybe not almost every brand, but many brands are starting to build out their own Refer a Friend program. So this is one of the things that we do over here at AddShoppers. So I figured we could pull our stats for this so you guys can get a feel for how these things may actually work if it's something you're looking into. So on the bottom, you can see an example of what this might look like if you run a Refer a Friend campaign. And then you can see the stats here. We see about 35 sales for every 100 shares with Refer a Friend. So pretty good conversion rate. And if this is something you're thinking about, we definitely encourage looking into launching one of these programs in 2016. Next up, let's move to targeting. So now we're going to shift gears a little bit. We're going to go a little away from some of the social and the referral stuff, and we're going to look at, once people are on your site, how are you targeting them and how are you getting them to convert, whether that's an email capture or an actual sale. So the first thing that we took a look at over 2015 was what we call cohort behavioral targeting. So take a look at the screenshot here on the left and you'll see an example of what we mean. So most companies and most brands run what we call entrance email captures to all traffic as soon as it hits the site. So that's your modal pop-up that shows up, sign up and get 10% off your first order, and then it's an email capture. So the example that you see on the screen is doing the same thing, but it's targeting the message based on what we know about the visitor. And in this example, what we know is the traffic source that this person came from. So we're serving up a more personalized, targeted message. And that's what we mean by this cohort behavioral targeting. So the more interesting thing is, how does this actually work? Is it effective? And here's the result we saw. In 2015, when you personalize your messaging based on like one data point that you know about that person, the referring source, the conversion rates on average are 29% higher. So that means you're basically capturing 29% more emails. So that can add up to be very powerful if you use a lot of email marketing. So here's one thing that you can definitely think about for 2016, because this trend is going to continue. Next up, we started taking this one step further in 2015, and we started doing what we call one-to-one behavioral targeting. So here, as you can see in this example, not only are we showing a more targeted message, but it's hyper-personalized, and it includes information that is obviously highly personal, like your first name. So this is what we call one-to-one behavioral targeting. We started working with this a little bit in 2015, and we saw some pretty interesting results. So first up, the question that you're probably thinking is, does this work? Or maybe even, does it freak people out? Here are the results that we saw when we started testing these one-to-one messaging. Let's start with the one on the left. So this was an email capture form. So this was like a pop-up like we just looked at, and it was just asking for your name and email. So the personalized modal here, you can see it lifted the conversion rate by over 600%, which is pretty powerful. But then we also, once we saw that, we wanted to see how it would impact checkouts and conversions. We saw, okay, it works really well for capturing emails, but can this drive sales too? And here's the result that we saw here. Not as dramatic, but we saw a 9.7% increase in sales with having a hyper-personalized one-to-one message in the modal offer. So it may not look huge compared to the form completion one, but still a 9.7% increase in revenue due to just having more personalized information is definitely very powerful. Next up, we're going to look at retargeting. So one more poll here. I just wanted to do a quick survey of who's using retargeting ads and who isn't. So we'll let this one run for a little bit. Again, really simple, and then we'll take a look at the results and also some data behind the state of retargeting. All right, here we go. So we've got the results in, and 50% of people said yes, we use retargeting ads. 31% of people said no, and the remaining 19% of people said no, but this is something they're planning on starting in 2016. So let's take a look at what's the state of retargeting so you guys can really hit the ground running in 2016. So first up, it's still getting more competitive. Retargeting, it's been around for a while now, but the data shows that it's still getting more competitive, and what that really means is more expensive. So you can see here, CPMs on average over the course of 2015 went up a little over 24%. Cost per click went up about 14%, and the cost per action went up a little over 3%. Now, it's not all, doom and gloom. It's getting more competitive. It's getting more expensive. Can I even afford to do retargeting anymore? It's actually getting better. Retargeting is getting smarter because more and more companies are building out smarter retargeting algorithms that are going to spend more to target people that are more likely to buy and less to retarget people that are less likely to buy. So, quick plug for AddShoppers. This is something that we can help out with. Let's get to the stats here. So let's take Facebook retargeting first. Facebook retargeting, we actually saw get more competitive than web retargeting, which we'll look at in a moment. So because Facebook's advertising platform isn't quite as established as just your standard web display banner ads that have been running for 20 years now, it's still a little bit earlier stage, so competition is heating up at a faster rate. So CPMs are up 40%. So obviously more expensive. Cost per click, same thing, up over 28%, and your average cost per action is up a little over 25%. So things are definitely still getting more competitive on Facebook, but again, like I mentioned, it does not mean at all that you can't be very successful retargeting people on Facebook. So the best performing Facebook retargeting campaigns that we saw in 2015, here are the stats: an 11 times return on ad spend, which is very solid, about $2.72, and the average cost per action is about $10.79. So Facebook retargeting is something you're thinking about, and you have a really well-designed campaign, you can expect to see numbers that are somewhat in this range. Now let's move to web retargeting. So you'll see the stats up top. Everything didn't go up quite as much, but it did still go up, and it is still getting more competitive. But again, if you do have a campaign that's set up well and optimized, just like Facebook, you can still see very good results. So obviously the big number here is the 13.5 times return on ad spend. So very strong here. It's a little bit higher than Facebook, and the reason for that is it goes back to the whole mindset that people are in on Facebook. Facebook, they're more browsing, they're not really in buying mode. But when you can catch someone when they're browsing the web, maybe they're actually researching purchases. So you'll see a little bit higher, return on ad spend from web retargeting. And then here's your CPM and the average CPA. So the CPM much higher than Facebook just because of the difference in the cost of inventory. And then CPA a little bit higher there. Again, same thing going on. Now, finally, we're going to cover the top social networks and tell you exactly what you need to know about each one, and also give you guys some strategies that you can take away and start using on each of these networks right away. So real quick, read the hint there. This is basically pointing towards the fact that we're way past the point of social networks being like a silver bullet almost. 5 years ago, people were, or maybe more, people were saying all you have to do is just get on Facebook, set up a brand page, and you're just going to get all of this traffic from people on Facebook. And we now know that, surprise, surprise, it actually takes work and it takes marketing to turn social into sales. So some things to think about are going to be just that on-site targeting and basic lead nurturing strategy. So just keep that in mind. First up is Pinterest. So the one thing that you need to know about Pinterest and keep in mind is that it's a platform of discovery and inspiration. This is where a lot of people start their search. One thing that we say now is that Pinterest resembles like a search engine almost as much as a social network. So this is a lot of times where people will start their search for a product, but it may not necessarily be the place where they're going to end it. So we'll take a look at strategies, but again, 35% of all social shares are pinned, so definitely a network worth focusing on. So in order to really get behind what drives activity on Pinterest, let's think about how do most people use Pinterest? If you were to have an avatar in your mind of this is a Pinterest user and this is the reason that they clicked on pin and it came back to my site, it'll help you guys kind of understand how to work with this audience of people that come to Pinterest and eventually convert them down the line. So our kind of average Pinterest user is Mary. She's just on Pinterest. She's browsing around. She has a kind of a home design project. She's working on redoing her living room, so she's in the market for living room decor. Maybe nothing serious just yet, but she's just browsing stuff on Pinterest. She sees one of your products pinned to a board, and it catches her eye. She thinks it looks kind of cool, so she clicks on it to learn more. So here are the strategies around Pinterest, keeping this in mind, knowing why most people are arriving on your site from Pinterest. So first up, let's look at how do you drive that Pinterest traffic in the first place. Obviously, the example we just talked about, it kind of assumed that your pin was on a board that was kind of eligible to be shown when people are browsing. How do you make that happen? Our first strategy here is campaigns like the Pin to Win giveaways. We talked about this with the social contests, but these are really powerful for driving a lot of pins coming from your site of all of your products. And then once those pins are out there on Pinterest, they're going to continue to live out there, and people are going to click back on those in the future. Quick aside, Pinterest is a little different from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, most of the other social networks, and it's not quite as chronologically based. It doesn't always show things that are most recent. So just one thing to think about there. You don't have to be quite as instant with Pinterest. Second, we recommend looking into promoted pins. So obviously their platform, it isn't quite as built out and robust. The advertising platform has only been live for a little over a year now, so they're still developing that heavily, but a lot of times the best time to get in is early, so we recommend at least trying out promoted pins. And lastly, create strong branded Pinterest boards. So these are things I wouldn't recommend focusing your entire strategy on it, but if you can just get some people part-time to make your Pinterest boards look awesome, those are going to serve as a brand asset for the future. Secondly, how do we convert this Pinterest traffic once you get a stream of people coming to your site from Pinterest? So again, going back to our example of how people arrive at your site from Pinterest, this was a person who was just casually checking stuff out. So at the same time they're clicking on one of your pins and they're looking at your site, they're clicking on 10 other pins and looking at 10 other competitors. So what you need to do is utilize top of funnel tactics for your Pinterest traffic. So email captures are going to be number one here. You can do something to grab that person's email address. Now you can use your traditional nurturing type email marketing strategies to get this person back to your site when there's a little bit less noise and they've had a chance to get to know you and your brand and your company and your products a little bit. Personalization is here because that's one of the things that you can do to stand out from your competition and actually get that person to raise their hand and give you their email. So we're going to look at an example of this on the next slide. So keep that one on hold for now. And then lastly, retargeting is going to be big for Pinterest. So same idea here, top of funnel browsers. You want to bring them back to your site once there's a little bit less noise going on and they're a little bit more focused. So retargeting is a really great way to do that. People that click on your pins, they're showing interest. They're definitely a prospect. They're just really high up in the funnel and they're not ready to buy yet. And you need to do something to get them to come back. so that you go from just a random pin that they've seen once and they're gonna forget about to someone that now they're browsing your catalog, they're checking out your products, they know who you are, and they're much more likely to buy. So here's the one campaign we recommend for Pinterest. So this is going back to that cohort behavioral targeting that we looked at a couple sections ago. Here's an example for Pinterest. If you can trigger this modal for any traffic that comes from Pinterest with this Pinterest exclusive offer, you'll see a 29% higher email capture rate. So you don't even have to change the offer here. You don't have to give a bigger discount or something. Just personalizing this message will help you stand out from all of that competition on Pinterest and capture more emails. Next up is email. So we're talking about emails to a friend here. So just to make the clarification, we're not talking about any of your marketing broadcast type emails. This is strictly emails to a friend. So this is the one big thing you need to know about email. It drives collaboration and decision making. So unlike Pinterest, you are going to catch people that are closer to the bottom of the buying funnel with email shares. And we'll look at some strategies to help turn that into revenue in a moment. But first up, I wanted to highlight this stat here. 11% of all shares are emails, but, and this is the big one, clicks on shared links via email convert at 3.9%. And that's #1 overall from any social source by a really big margin. So this traffic converts really well because they're in the decision-making process. So just like Pinterest, let's think about how people use email sharing, keeping in mind that collaboration and decision-making stage of the buying process. So in this example, we have Mike. Him and his wife are shopping for a new couch. So he's browsing your site. You have a bunch of couches. He finds his 5 favorite ones, and he emails each one to his wife so that she has them. She can take a look at all of them, and then they're going to collaborate together on which one they think would be best, and they'll go ahead and make that purchase. So keep that in mind when thinking about how people share over email. So here are the takeaways that you need to know with email sharing. #1, hopefully it's pretty apparent now, but always offer email to a friend type sharing. If you're not offering it, you're basically leaving money on the table because this is such high quality of people as far as where they are in the decision-making purchase. With that said, because email to a friend gets lumped into the same category as all social sharing, you might not want to reward those emails because it's just a one-to-one share, and they're a little bit lower in the funnel already. So one thing you can do, if you do want to do some of that, referral marketing, social rewards, where you're incentivizing social sharing, is incentivize all networks except for email. And that's something you can set up with something like AddShoppers or another platform that you may be using. Lastly, utilize cohort segmentation for email traffic and make personalized offers. So again, this is going to be that behavioral targeting, the personalized messaging that we've looked at a couple times now. This really comes into play with email, and you can do some really cool things. So look at the example on the left. In this example, this is someone clicking over in an email, maybe that you sent them back to your site, and because you know they came from email and you know who they are, you can now serve up a personalized one-to-one offer. So in this example, this guy is a loyal customer, so we're going to give him 10% off his next order because we know he shops a couple times a year. On the right, this is taking things a step further in a different direction. So maybe you don't want to just drive sales or give away coupons all the time to your top customers. You can also use this kind of targeting to promote other campaigns, such as, in this example, a Refer a Friend program. So again, because Mike is a VIP customer, he's going to be much more likely to actually participate in any of the referral campaigns you have running. So here we're promoting the Refer a Friend program that in this example you have running, and promoting the fact that he can get $25 for every referral. So a couple things to think in mind with how you're targeting your email traffic. There's a lot of really cool stuff you can do, and this is going to be big in 2016. And then next up is Facebook. So obviously Facebook is the biggest social network, and it means a lot of things to a lot of people, but when it comes to e-commerce, if we had to boil things down and choose one thing to know about Facebook, it's that it drives awareness and social proof. One thing to keep in mind, we'll look at this again in the strategies, but if you do have a really strong on-site Facebook sharing campaign where maybe you're incentivizing sharing before purchase or something like that, you can actually see conversion rates to sales at over 16% after someone shares out. So who is our kind of average, Facebook sharer? Why do people share on Facebook when it comes to, e-commerce and interacting with brands and products? In this example, we have Ashley. She just bought some heels and she's super excited. So she decides to share them out on the checkout success page because there was a purchase sharing, prompt to share. So she thinks that's perfect because she wants to brag a little bit. So she shares them out, and then just to, take things one step further, she challenges them to step their shoe game up because she feels like that's the perfect addition to her enormous shoe cabinet. So knowing this and how a lot of people use Facebook, what are the best strategies that we can employ to, make the most out of Facebook? What's the lowest hanging fruit? First up, focus on loyalty and maximum lifetime value strategies for Facebook. So, you're not really focused on like one-time thing, sales or events, where you just want someone to, blast out a bunch of products, to Facebook. That kind of stuff, Pinterest. Facebook, this is going to be more things like we just looked at, the purchase sharing. So some of the campaigns we recommend here, like I said, purchase sharing, refer a friend is great here. If someone joins your refer a friend program, get them to share out their link on Facebook, really great. And then the social contests are good too, because those are things that people's friends are actually going to be interested in. So social contests work really well if you have a really good offer. People will share that stuff on Facebook, and then people that see that share on Facebook, they're going to want to come and enter too. So think about that with Facebook. And then second point here is retargeting. So just like Pinterest, you are going to get a lot of people from Facebook that are just, they're more in social mode. They're not really in buying mode yet. So retargeting is going to be big to bring these people back. You can retarget on Facebook and across the web, both. It doesn't matter. But definitely think about retargeting, the traffic that you're seeing from Facebook. So again, in this kind of example campaign, this is showing the example of what purchase sharing might look like if you're prompting people to share out after they purchase, specifically to Facebook. So this is kind of what that process looks like if you see it here. So here's the prompt to share on the left, and then here's what it might look like on the right in Facebook. And to give you guys some data from 2015 around this, one client that we work with sees almost a 30% conversion rate from clicks on links shared just like this. So definitely something to think about there. Last up is Twitter. So I thought long and hard about what is Twitter? What does it really mean? And if you had to boil Twitter down to one statement, what would it be? And this is what I came up with. And I really think it's true. Twitter is the internet stream of consciousness. So everything ends up on Twitter. The good, the bad, the ugly. It's all instantly posted to Twitter, 2.5 seconds after it happens in real time. So, Twitter's just this real time, they even call it the fire hose. It's just anything and everything, gets on Twitter. So with that said, it seems like Twitter almost is like a mess, and I don't know about you, but I find Twitter to be a little bit overwhelming because there's so much noise. But we'll look at some ways that you can actually cut through all of the noise and really leverage Twitter. So again, For Twitter, let's look at, what drives tweeting. Why do people tweet things out, to their Twitter feed? So here's Matt. He just read a post on your blog, and he thought it was cool. He thought, his friends or his followers, might think it's, interesting as well. So he tweets it out. And next up, now he's checking out products in your store. So here's the strategy with Twitter. The first thing to keep in mind is people have less of a filter when it comes to tweet. Think about it. You'll share something on Twitter that you won't share on Facebook because it just doesn't really matter. Again, there's so much noise. But the real strategy here is if you can get a lot of people to tweet at once and tweet out like the same thing. So some ways that you can do this are like giveaways. We've talked a lot about social contests, but if you run one on Twitter, or maybe you have some kind of a sale or a piece of content that you want to gate behind a tweet so it becomes tweet to access. The idea here is when a lot of people tweet something at once, if you can get a ton of people to do it with a hashtag, it can trend, and you'll see that on the trending tweets. Obviously, that'll take some real muscle, and unless you have a huge following, you may not get that big. But for people that aren't quite that big and don't have millions and millions of followers on Twitter, if you get a lot of people to tweet something at once, you increase the likelihood that Twitter recognizes it as important. And if they do that, then they'll start emailing that tweet to people that follow the person that originally posted it. And that's one way that you can cut through a lot of the clutter on Twitter and actually get into people's inbox from Twitter. So kind of a cool thing to think about there. Definitely a more advanced kind of under the radar strategy. And then another way to achieve this same thing that relies less on Twitter and their algorithm for determining stuff that's important and worth emailing is to ask people to tweet at friends when they share. So here's an example of what this might look like, and this is like an example of a Twitter giveaway. So the way this would work is you just have to tweet at 3 friends to enter the $100 gift card giveaway. So the strategy here and the way you're really utilizing Twitter is when someone tags you in a tweet, you get multiple notifications of that. It's gonna if you use the app on your phone, it's gonna pop up a notification that someone mentioned you. It's gonna show up in your actual Twitter with the notification icon, and you might get an email about it too. So this way you can really cut through the noise in at least 3 ways. And while it might not, one tweet might not reach millions of people, it's much better to reach 3 people directly where they're going to see it than, tweet out something where 1 million people can see it, but no one really will, or they won't give it any thought. So this is one way that you can think about using Twitter to, actually generate results from it. Lastly, we're just going to cover some of the more niche social networks and, what do you need to know about these for 2016. So, these are much smaller networks. They don't see quite as much activity, but there are some interesting, opportunities in here. So, first up is Polyvore. If you're in the fashion, apparel, jewelry, anything similar in that industry, you can definitely think about Polyvore, and it can definitely be worth it. It sends traffic that actually converts really well for any of those kind of products, so definitely think about that if that's you. Also, home and garden is starting to get more popular on Polyvore, so if you're in home and garden or furniture, you can definitely maybe start thinking about Polyvore. You could become one of the more early adopters in your industry, which usually helps to be first, so definitely think about that. Google+, the media loves to write about how Google+ is a total failure, and as a social network, I think it probably is, but there are definitely some interesting pieces to Google+ that you can utilize to success if you have the right audience. So, studies and data has shown that it's mostly a techie audience that actually uses Google Plus and is most likely to interact with it. So if that's your audience, you can do some really cool things on Google Plus, like hosting Google Hangouts to build buzz around products that haven't launched yet, or any products maybe that you're heavily promoting. You could host Hangouts, show off how it works, your features of your product, generate interest, and and interact with potential customers to really build buzz. So one thing to think about for Google Plus if you do have a tech-focused audience. And then the second thing for Google Plus, again, we already talked about this at the beginning, but it's definitely very useful for social login because it'll log people in with their Gmail. Next up is Wanilo, and this is one that kind of went in a different direction, maybe a little bit more quickly than people were expecting. So recently they've shifted towards basically a pay-to-play model where you have to sell on their platform, and your products have to be available to buy on Wanilo without going back to your site in order for them to really give you any visibility at all. So if you don't mind that, they have a 10% commission, and your demographic meets theirs. It might be worth testing out. So they have a younger female demographic, so you're kind of the more millennials, probably under 30, is kind of the sweet spot for Wanilo. And most of what works best on Wanilo is going to be your apparel and jewelry type products. And also I see them mostly, converting the most in the lower to middle price range. I don't see them doing too much in the luxury segment. So again, if you're in the more, think about Wanilo. And then lastly is Tumblr. So this one really just comes down to if you have a young demographic, you can see if you can incentivize people to blog on Tumblr about maybe your products, or review it, or share their experience with your products. That might be useful, but otherwise I wouldn't really recommend that you need to spend too much time on Tumblr. So with that said, that's all we have today. So again, Happy New Year. I really hope you guys crush it in 2016. So about the full breakdown with all the stats, the way this is going to work, we've actually previewed some of the stats from the full report during this webinar today, so you've already seen that first before everybody else. You'll get an email very shortly when the report is live on the site, and again, you'll be the first to get that, so look forward to it. And there will also be some coverage in the press too, so maybe keep an eye out for that. We may email anything really interesting out in our next newsletter. So something to think about. And then lastly, I am actually, if you have any interest in AddShoppers at all, and this is totally up to you, but I'm actually jumping back on the virtual stage here in about an hour to do a live demo of AddShoppers. So if you want to check it out and see if we might be able to help out with any of this stuff in 2016, there's the link there on the screen. I think it also might be in the chat box. So just click on that and register. And that'll be much shorter. It's about 20 minutes, so you won't have to listen to me for a full hour. But if you're interested, check it out. And other than that, I'd like to thank you guys for showing up. And again, best wishes for 2016. And hopefully we'll talk soon. Have a great afternoon.